Welcome to Jim's Take, another episode, another guest. We're very, very, very excited for this one. Well, at least I am. I'm incredibly excited. This is where I live. This is my kind of fun type of conversation, like going on long runs, thinking about why, thinking about all this really incredible stuff. We have an incredible guest here, also over across the pond from Ireland. We always have these guests from Ireland because I just seem to think that this is where the best guests tend to come from. One of the things, and I'm very busy now, and a lot of people, a lot of the clients, we're always talking about AI and what's happening with AI and all of that. And there are real fundamental components that we as humans really have to focus on, and we're responsible for it for ourselves. You heard me with Janine a couple of weeks ago talking about Brian, the need for in-person social interaction. There's this idea of financial independence and buying power. If your job's taken away, how are people going to, change the psychology of consumerism and all of that? That's another topic for another day. But the really big one, and the one that I love to talk about, the really fun one, and if you read the book, My Ideas on a Belief System and a Personal Philosophy and Understanding Why. This need to be critical thinkers, not just about the world around us, not just to question the things that are happening to us, but to have that internal, deep kind of conversation with ourselves and ask ourselves the hard types of questions. And rather than just have me spit about it for a long time, we decided to bring in the expert, right? So Ronan Rooney here from Ireland. Ronan, thank you so much for being here. Tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Jim. Well, first, look, it's been brilliant. It's great to be here. And this city is class, really class. We've had a ball for the last couple of days. Yeah, it was okay. About me, I've had a kind of a bit of a dichotomy of a kind of a career. So I've got a real estate company, third generation family that I took over. But I was always kind of like you were saying when I was 7, I was thinking about what's life all about? Who am I? Why am I here? And what is the meaning behind it all? So that kind of came all the way through my life and even all the way through my career. So I started off in college and I did philosophy and metaphysics and applied maths. So I did my BA in that. And I started getting answers about why are we here, which was super. But then I fell into the family business, which was good. So I went into the family business and spent 10 years and did really, really well, very successful. But then I kind of wanted to follow my own path. I was always trying to follow this question of who am I, why am I here? So I went off my own then for a couple of years. I'm still doing consultancy back to the practice, but went off my own, wrote a couple of books. Deepak, Chopra, Sharma endorsed them, did really well, spoke in Sydney, Australia, the US, France, Germany. Anyway, I had a good couple of years. But then I decided to go back in and help my dad because the markets had crashed 2008 after the financial crash, and I needed to go back in and help him. So I went back in. And then he died a year later. So I kind of got stuck with it because I thought I was out. Thought I was going to go back in for a year. Ended up going in and having to take over everything. And it was one of the best lessons I ever learned because, I always think that you can learn different things. You can have knowledge, but you only get wisdom from the actual integrating whatever you've learned into everyday life and learning real life lessons. So I found myself, my dad had always told me, we've got money. You'll never have to worry about money. That changed and turned on its head. So we were kind of worth about 10 million. Then we ended up overnight nearly owing 5 million. So we were insolvent. So we had the banks trying to take the business, repossessing the house, all that. So I learned an awful lot through that process, got through it all, and came out the other end. But even though I had everything else sorted, I crashed basically, and overnight I was committed to an institution. So I spent 4 months in a mental hospital trying to recover. But I recovered, and again, a really good juncture in my life because I started again to come back to, let's really focus on what is life all about. Like you've learned a few lessons here, so let's see, what is it really all about? And is there meaning behind all this? And what's the underlying true essence of what life is really all about? And so then I really found myself. And from there, then I think I'm more or less semi-retired. So I still work for the practice, and I've kind of transferred it over to my kids and that, and I consult back to them. But really, I'm following my path now. I'm writing my third book, which goes a bit deeper and it goes into conscious awareness, which is all about being able to get in touch with who you really are and be that authentic self and live and express that authentic self in this really busy world. So
there's so much there that I'm going to pick it apart. Okay. It's a wild story. Lots of ups, like life happens. And we have to, we can't always control what happens. Like 2008, you can't control it, and we have to respond to it in different types of ways. I want to get into the whole philosophy plus metaphysics plus math and how they're all connected. But before that, you mentioned authentic self. And it's becoming a buzzword, which I hate. I hate buzzwords. But talk to me about the meaning. One is follow your authentic self. What does that mean? Right? And then also, how did these life lessons say, you know what, I'm disjointed? I mean, I feel like it's kind of this, I made these decisions, brought me on this path, and I need to self-correct to get back to where I am, but I'm going to take the lessons with me, not all the baggage. Talk to me a little bit about all that.
Yeah, that's a good summary. I mean, and look, first of all, if you go back to the authentic self, I think, yeah, it is a buzzword. People are throwing authentic self left, right, and center. But if you bring it back to its basics, the authentic self is where you're expressing the best version of who you are. So whether that's the traits and characteristics that you have that you're expressing, or whether it's taking the best circumstances and situations in your life and making the best outcome of them. But realistically, with the authentic self, it's people ask me, how do I know if I am my authentic self? How do I know if I'm expressing it? If you're living a peaceful, fulfilling, meaningful and successful life, then you are expressing and living your authentic self. It is quite easy. But if there's anything that is missing in your life, if your life is not 100%, then there's something missing that's in your life, and you need to change that. And an awful lot of it is usually the lifestyle and the environment that we put ourselves in. So a lot of the time that stunts actually the development of your authentic self, because a lot of us, we are all born into a certain conditioning, whether it's family or relations or situations and circumstances. And what we need to do is actually strip back the conditioning to reveal who the authentic self is. So we're born and we know who we are. It's just that we're conditioned out of that, and then we have to remember it. And it starts off with the intellect. So the intellect, first of all, you use that to strip back the conditioning and realize that, some of the values and some of the decisions I've made haven't been my decisions. I've made them because of the way I've been brought up, or different circumstances. I've made them because I've been conditioned in a certain way, but that hasn't served me. So okay, I've learned lessons from them, but now I want to actually live my total true self. And what are my own values, not somebody else's values? And who am I? Not who am I, the person that is supposed to be developed into XYZ just because somebody else tells you. So it's find out who you really are, not who somebody else tells you should be.
Yeah, one of the things when I launched my business, I found probably about 3 or 4 years in, I was so frustrated with it where I said, you know what, I'm just repeating the things that I've always heard. I need to unlearn all of the things that I've learned in order to do that. When you think about authentic self, the first question, if I were to talk to someone about this, I imagine would come up, well, how do I know what I'm good at? Or how do I know, where is it? I feel like they're looking externally. Is the first step not to focus on what you're good at, but to instead start with maybe what do you believe? Is that kind of what assumptions are you making? Talk to me more about finding that kind of the intellect focus to shed the conditioning, because I feel like that's a mental practice.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of started on the intellect side of things, because I think because we are so infused with the intellect. I mean, the data-driven age is so intoxicating, and our intellect loves it. We just love being bombarded with data. So it actually starts with that. We have to use our intellect to strip back the conditioning and to understand the process of stripping back the conditioning first. But really, it's deep within yourself. It's like to find that true authentic self is then deep within yourself. And that comes in basically what I call the gap, where you basically can shut out all of your thoughts and get back to, it's like a reboot when you plug out your computer and plug it back in again, and you strip away everything else and you're just you. Another example is, if you try this, the minute you wake up in the morning, just sense how you feel before you have any thought. That is actually who you really are. That's your true authentic self. There's no issues, there's no worries, there's no nothing. You're just pure you. Then
in that instant,
yeah. Then the thoughts start popping up, and then conditioning starts. But the trick with all of this is to actually be able to stay in that authentic self is when the first thought comes up, before that and the next thought, there's a gap. And in that gap, that's where you have the actual control. So that's where you start rechanging your values. That's where you start changing the next thought and deciding the trajectory of my thought patterns are going to change into a different way when you start realizing who you really are.
Is this because we think about, all right, so I'm trying to find out my authentic self. I've got these challenging thoughts, and ultimately we're talking a lot about anxiety. What external factors are giving you this massive amount of anxiety that's impact, or some form of anxiety that's impacting your ability to be true to yourself, whether it's social anxiety, whether it's the conditioning of family or friends or work pressures or something. And generally, it's an external focus that's been thrust upon us. Is this, I mean, most people we love data. And so we're thinking of how do I workshop myself through this, right? And so they want to say, what's the puzzle? Are there questions that you can ask? Is this something about, when you're reflecting in the moment, and you have a choice to go this way or that way, you just go by feeling where you're like, I'm more inclined to do this, and this is probably the right choice rather than what I'm supposed to do. What kind of workshopping or challenges or questions can we be asking ourselves?
You could spend a month talking about all those different types of methodologies and how to actually do that. I think to try and simplify it, and that's what a lot of people ask me, how do you simplify it and bring it back down? When you are doing good for somebody else, when you feel, I've done really good, or, you really express that best part of yourself, when you've used some of the traits and characteristics that you have, whether you're a good speaker or teacher or stock exchange broker, it doesn't matter. Whatever you're doing, when you're actually in the flow and that's when your authentic self is
and
expressing
proud of
yourself.
something.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you just, like, I've got a business guy that came to me last week and he said, what can you do for me? And, I really need to find my authentic self. And after I spoke to him for 5 minutes, I knew he's living his authentic self, and he was, I actually am. He's really happy. He's really peaceful. What he does is he buys businesses, but he actually helps people who are retiring, and he turns them into growth, and then he takes care of the retiree. And I was saying, look, you're using the best traits and characteristics that you have, and you're helping people, and you're happy, and you're peaceful and fulfilled, and you're creating a legacy. I said, that's it. Like, so if you're trying to find out, am I doing it, or am I on that path? When you feel good about yourself, when you feel warm inside, when you're actually really expressing yourself, and when you're being successful and doing really well, and exercising all of those traits and characteristics and helping somebody else, that's it.
It's an interesting example on the guy who was living it. So often we are incredibly focused on what we don't have that we forget what we do have. And is it a mindset shift? I mean, you talk about a reboot. Like, is this like a shot you could take and all of a sudden it's done? Like, is this you have to go deep into meditation? Is this an ayahuasca trip, or is this something that you could do on your own where it's a reflection of, look how lucky I am? Is this a matter of luck? Is this a matter of being proud of what you have? How many people would you say actually are living their authentic selves, but they're just too caught up in what's going on around them that they don't even recognize it? What have you seen?
Yeah, I think, like, for me, I think it's meditation, and there's lots of different types of meditation, but I think for me, meditation is the one tool that you can actually use to get back to who you really are and strip it back, because the intellect is really good. It's really good at actually twisting things around to bring you back out of your inauthentic self and start saying, oh yeah, your authentic self, you're a good speaker, so let's make loads of money about that, and take advantage of people left, right and center. But you're doing your authentic self because you're expressing your best traits. So it has a way, and the ego has a way of turning things around. But the pure authentic self is where, when you go to without your thoughts, into that space where your purity is there, and then you just said it there, Jim, a second ago, it doesn't just come. It is, because our intellect is so entrained in the neural pathways in our brain, you really have to work at it intellectually to change them. But also you need to be able to go into that quietness of the gap on a consistent basis as well. And yeah, some people do ayahuasca, they go up the mountains and they take a week retreat and they do whatever else, and they get that jolt and they get it. But it's hard to sustain that. I find that it's easier if you actually develop a really good practice that works for you, and then consistently go into that. Because the beauty of this is usually, it's not in the actual experience that you have in that moment. It's being able to go into that experience and bring that into this experience.
Implement it into your life. Yeah.
They call it coming from the non-local into the local. The non-local being, the world that is beyond time, space, causality, the phenomenal world of form and matter. And they say when you go into that deep space of meditation to your true self, it's non-local. And then when you come out, you bring bits of that and you bring the traits of that into this phenomenal world. So you need to keep doing it and do it on a consistent basis. It doesn't mean that you got to do hours and hours and hours. Like my practice, I do about a half-hour meditation every morning. It's good to do 50 minutes in the morning and evening. I just like, half an hour in the morning. And then if I feel like it, I'll do more. But consistency is the main thing. And then you'll start seeing the differences and the changes in your life around you, as opposed to just seeing the difference in that immediate experience.
I want to ask more about authentic self versus success, but you just said one thing about bringing it into this world. How many worlds do we live in? I mean, is there like this is like this could get deep and go off on a complete tangent, right? But I've met with people who talk about the spirit world, and this is just a temporary thing, and there are people flying all around us, and there's all kinds of stuff, and we're living on different planes, and you leave this plane, go to a different. What's your kind of experience, and what do you believe? Because this is always I'm just curious about it.
Yeah, I mean, this you can go down the rabbit hole with this.
Yeah.
This gets really interesting, but I always find if you look about time first of all as a concept, time itself. That time is only relevant to this world, or the Earth. I mean, the minute you go off the Earth, time just dissipates. It changes altogether. If you take time out of every equation, all of a sudden, all your questions that you asked there, they fall away. Like, is this the right world, or is it the next dimension, or is it the third dimension, the fifth dimension, or is it a different spirit world? All that falls away when time is taken out of the equation. The reality is that there is only one reality, which is this. I think the easiest way to understand it is that we've got 4 levels: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And the first 3 levels always change. So our physical bodies change. Obviously, you're a different body to when you were 7. Your mental thoughts change consistently, and your emotions change. But the spirit aspect of yourself, the true self, even when you were 7 to when you were 40 to when you're 60, 80, that sense of I never changes. So that is the true reality, and that goes beyond time, space, causality, and that is what lives on when we die, in whatever context you want to take it. Now, we will use our intellect to figure that out so that we can live in this intellectual world and be able to define it, but really it can't be defined because language sustains it. It doesn't sustain it because you can't explain it in language,
right?
And you can't actually understand it, because if you understand it, you're using your intellect, and the intellect is confined to this realm as well. So the true essence is the true self. And then back to where we talked about a second ago, in meditation, in that gap, in between the thoughts, in between the breaths, in the deep meditation, that's your true essence, that's the true reality, and that's the only realm there is.
I feel that's fantastic. I feel there's, I ponder a lot when I'm going on a run, and I just pick things and to think about, and right, there is no future technically, and there is no past technically, because the only thing you have is currently right now. And does anything exist outside of your mind? And are we even having this conversation? Do you exist? I love going down and hearing other people's types of perspectives, because one of the guys I spoke to who had done ayahuasca spoke with the creator in his kind of ceremony and did all that stuff, where similar to you, it was just your decisions don't matter, nothing matters, because it's all just kind of this perspective. The reason you do whatever it is you do is to remember who you are, and that's ultimately what we're all here for, is to remember who we are, which comes from, I guess, like Alan Watts would say, you don't have a soul, you come from the soul, because everything's connected. Do you feel similar to, I mean, are they on the right kind of track?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's my philosophy as well. I think that to bring it a step further without going into religion or spirituality to a certain extent is, I believe that we're all individual aspects of the divine, of God. So whatever you want, you can define God in whatever way you want. But I think we're all individual aspects of God, and that's why when we feel really good about ourselves, when we're being our authentic self, we are being the best expression of the individualized aspect of God. And so, as you say, we come here for one reason: to remember, first of all, who we really are, which is, and the essence, which is God, but also to be the best expression of the individuality that we have, that we got from God. So that's where I say to people, if you have traits and characteristics, and if you can use those traits and characteristics to help somebody else, and you don't, well, then you're doing everybody a disservice, not just you.
In terms of God, it's an interesting kind of, do you think you can find your authentic self without properly defining God? I mean, you're taught that God is this bearded dude in the sky, yada, 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 but some people replace God with the word love, or replace God with the word being, or something like that. I mean, is that a fundamental part of whether you believe in God or not? But if you change the wording, like, oh, I believe something, is that an important part of defining your authentic self?
I think it's whatever way you want to define it for yourself, because really, I mean, it doesn't matter, I don't think it matters what you define God as long as if you're being the best version of you in this world, I mean, then whatever the God is, or wherever it is, or whatever way you want to find it doesn't really make a difference.
Right.
Now, I do believe if you want to go deeper, I think that, when I go into the real deep, authentic self, into my own self, into beyond even that sense of self, you can go quite deep into meditation beyond that again, and you find this space where it's not even a sense, because it's beyond the senses. It's an awareness, which is what my next book is, but the new book is about. And it's when you get to that awareness stage, and you realize you are God. Now that's really cool, and that's happened to me a couple of times. And when you get to that level, all of these questions fall away. They really don't mean anything because they are intellectually driven, and they're all trying to define something it's like trying to define something into the phenomenal world and into our intellectual understanding, which cannot be defined and cannot be understood intellectually.
So I feel like if you put a word around that, is that enlightenment?
Yes.
So talk to me about enlightenment. Is that ultimately what we're searching for, that kind of enlightenment? We're talking a little bit about the authentic self, but then does enlightenment give you the meaning? Talk to me about the balance between the two.
Well, the balance is interesting because I think I don't want to be fully enlightened, because if I'm fully enlightened, I can't enjoy the fun that's here in this world. Because if you're fully enlightened, well, then you know exactly who you are and you're totally at one with God. And then if you get to that level and you can stay in that level, you don't want to be here. And basically, you're gone. So, we came here for a reason into this world. You and I are here for a specific reason. I believe it's to express the traits and characteristics that we were given in the best possible way, and to be the best expression of the divine through this, whatever incarnation it is. But after that, enlightenment is something that we were before we were born. We will be after we die. And it is our true essence and our true sense. But it's something that can't be actually fully experienced in this moment, in this realm, because if it is, you know, it's so superior to what we're actually, the phenomenal world, you'd go off the planet.
So if it's before we were born and after we're dead, what's the point of this little trip around the rock on the sun?
I think it's a fun ride. I really do. I think
because I think about it sometimes as you think about trillions of years, again, time. But 100 years in terms of a trillion years is like an afternoon at Coney Island.
Nothing.
Right? It's nothing. So is this like we're just on a vacation?
Yeah, I mean, if you can, if you took a day, just take a day off altogether, right? And stop mobile phones and stop all the intellectual aspects that are triggering your brain. And then just look at the plants, look at the sky, look at the seas, and realize, how is the sky hasn't fallen into the sea, the land hasn't got swallowed up by the sea. Look at an apple, look at the foods that we have. Look, I mean, we are walking through an absolute miracle. We are miracles ourselves. I think I looked up ChatGPT. There's a 1 in 1 trillion chance that any of us are here when you bring in all the conceptual aspects of the biological whatever. So I mean, we are walking in a miracle. So it's not like, when you ask the question, why are we here? So we're here to enjoy a miracle. Like, it's been provided for us. Now that doesn't mean that, I know there might be somebody listening who's going through a lot of turmoil, and they say, well, it's easy for you to say, we're walking in a miracle, but the reality of it is everybody has their cards dealt to them. Everybody has challenges, some more than others. Some are more able to deal with higher challenges than others. So it's all relevant. But when you come through those challenges, you look back and you get a lot from those challenges. And the real experience of life is not being sitting on the top of a mountain in bliss. The real experience of life is coming through some of the challenges, coming out through them the other end, and realizing who you are, and then realizing how amazing and how pure life is.
Do you think... So we're recording this now, but the podcast I just released, which is not going to be right before the podcast here comes out, so it comes back and forth, was on the benefits of struggle. Do you think with AI and technology and everything, things are becoming too easy where we have to actively search for some kind of struggle? And I'm not talking about massive hardship. I mean, we can talk about the fairness of why some people have to deal with an incredible hardship versus others. And I mean, we didn't plan to go over fairness, but that's a different kind of thing. But do we have to almost create artificial struggle in some kind of way to see what we're made of, to test our mettle, to kind of, manufacture some kind of way to say, what am I capable of?
No, I don't think so. I don't think we need to have suffering in this world. I think that we can have, again, that's my book says, that we can have nirvana, heaven on earth right now if we want it. I mean, there's enough resources in the world to sort all the problems that we have in the world. If everybody expressed their authentic self and allowed everybody else to express their authentic self, we would have no problems in the world. And who's to say that it's an issue where we don't need suffering? The whole world, we could all be living in total harmony and total peace and enjoying the miracle of life without all the hardships. Easily, we could. We have the resources to tackle and to change all of that. So no, I don't think we need suffering. I think that's a bit of a trigger point for me, because some religions say you need to have suffering, and they feel that you need to suffer through life and get through life. I don't believe you need to get through life.
Well, maybe not. I mean, maybe not suffering, but just do you need to create challenges for yourself to see what you're made of? Like, signing up for an Ironman. to see if you could do it, or a marathon, or like, because everything is done for us, right? And so, I mean, I feel like that's part of the, we are here to enjoy a miracle, is what you just said. And is that a massive secret that we're missing, that it's fundamentally about appreciation, not just about the external world around us, but appreciation of what we're capable of? And does this go back to, what am I good at and what can I do, and all of that is appreciation. And I don't like the word gratitude because that's overused too, but I feel like appreciation for the beauty and everything, and the beauty of overcoming and beauty of all of that. Is that where it is?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned challenge there in the middle of all that as well. I think it is realizing the miracle, but also realizing how amazing we are, and then pushing yourself, because this life is there to be lived. It's not there, and you need to push yourself and have challenges and put yourself out there. Ultimately, an awful lot of us are fearful of change, and I know you talk a lot about change, and you're one of the experts in change. But I think people, they say let's hold where we are. I feel at peace where I am. I don't really want to put myself out of my comfort zone. But that's not what we're humans are made of. We're there to be creative. We're there to be expressive. So yeah, bring on the challenges, bring on the Ironman, bring on whatever, and embrace challenges. And when you're dealt with them in life as well, see them as a challenge that. The reason you're getting those challenges is because you're able to handle them.
Right. I
don't think you've been given them unless you can handle them. And I've seen some people get dealt the worst cards ever, and they come through it, and they're angels at the end of it. And it's, so who's to say? But I do think that we're given circumstances in our life to be that best expression of ourselves for all of us. And when you said it at the very, very start, that we are all interconnected. So if we are all interconnected, well then, all of us have to express the best we can. And if we do, we're doing each other a service. And that's what we should be grateful for.
I think this next question is going to, it's probably about to lead us into conscious awareness, because I do want to ask about the book. The idea of nirvana on earth, we have all the resources, we have all of these things, is a nice idea. But somebody listening right now might be saying, well, nobody else is getting on board with this. So how do I find my position within the context of a world that just won't fix everything like that? Do you have advice for people who, if we have all the resources, we have all the things, but we're still humans, and there are bad humans, and there are good humans, and there's all kinds of, we're not going to find this nirvana necessarily. Or is it just within our mind? Is that just kind of ultimately up to you, rather than wait for everybody else? Talk to me about, for someone who wants to get there, but you can't wait for the world to catch up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this is the insight that I got in India, which helped me to finish the book. I believe that we can actually have that state of nirvana in the midst of turmoil around us. So what that means is that you don't have to wait for the whole world to actually elevate to their authentic self, and we're all sitting and having a great picnic and a great party, and it's all a beautiful miracle. It doesn't matter. Even if there's turmoil around you, you can actually remain in a state of grace. So the likes of Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or people like that who have been abused in the phenomenal world, but have also been able to remain in a state of grace. That is what I believe humanity has now evolved to. So we're going through, I believe, a paradigm shift. And this isn't just me, and an awful lot of scientists that I've been following, scientists who have a philosophy background, are saying that we are going through a paradigm shift, humanity in its evolution. And I believe that a part of that evolution is that everybody now can actually experience that, where you can experience multiple states of consciousness at the same time. So when we talk about that, it's basically you can have the waking state of consciousness, the dream state, deep sleep state, and then there's higher cosmic and unity consciousness, divine consciousness. There's all these different ones that are defined intellectually, okay? But getting beyond the intellect, you can stay in that state of grace amidst turmoil. So it means that you hold the state of grace when you find out who you really are. You start expressing that, and then it doesn't matter what happens around you. If people are taking advantage of you or whatever, or even if they're living a life which is taking advantage of other people, it still doesn't bother you, because you just say that's their life. They're supposed to live that, and they'll get through karma or whatever. They'll actually experience what they're supposed to experience. They're living a life that they're supposed to live, and even if they're doing mean things to different people, they have a part to play in a bigger picture. And who are we, small individual, intellectual, driven humans, to try and figure it all out? So with all that, what I say is, yeah, you can have nirvana, heaven on earth, right now. And it doesn't mean that we have to be in a meadow with beautiful trees and plants and flowers. You can be in the midst of turmoil and be in that state of grace.
and just elevate your philosophy almost, or elevate your perspective on it in a different kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's easy to say, but realistically, you can do it. If you have a challenge, you can say, okay, I'm dealing with this challenge. I've been given it for a reason, and I'll get through it. When you're in the eye of the storm, yeah, it can be tough, but you will come through it, and you know that you will come through it. Now, some people are given really difficult challenges, and they may not think they can ever get through it when they're in the eye of it, but they always do, because we are human, and we've been given the strength and grace to actually get through those challenges. But when you get through those challenges, then you start realizing, other people aren't harming me. I don't care. I can stay in this state. And then all of a sudden, nothing matters. And you're in that state. And then you don't have to change the world, because most people who are coming from the right place feel, oh, my sister really needs this, or oh, my brother needs this, or my friend needs this, or my boss needs this. No, they're living their own life. So you get to a state where you're in a state of grace, and you don't have to change everybody else. You just stay in that state. And as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. Be you.
I like that. It's almost, I used to think of that as almost like a healthy selfishness, where it's not my problem. But ultimately it's not my problem. Like you interact, but right, your world is your domain. You have one of the things we spoke about before the podcast, everyone has an opinion on how to approach this. And you've had lots of great teachers. And everybody, I think, or people who are listening, who are saying, I want to start taking some of these steps, but I need some kind of guidance. There is no shortage of snake oil salesmen, the people who will sell you the dream. I'm thinking of, every religious preacher in the South of America who's got the big kind of, selling salvation and all of that. How do you find an authentic teacher to help you along this path? Because this isn't something where you just start asking yourself questions. Like, I feel like even though I do that, I feel like I pulled it from so many different places and opened myself up to so many different types of curious experiences and challenged myself in that kind of way. What advice do you have for people to look for a teacher, or should most of this just be done through your own exploration? Yeah, no, I think in Eastern philosophy always says that you need a guru. You need actually somebody, an actual person, to actually help you to elevate. And I kind of get that, because I think you can spend all your time on ChatGPT, AI, and checking this, that, and the other. You can get all the answers, and all of the most fantastic people in the world. All of their teachings and writings are available. They are available intellectually, but I think you need someone to actually be able to actually work with and elevate you. Now, and they are really hard to find, because this industry, we'll say they call it the personal development industry, is ripe with people who, prey on people's fears and their insecurities. Yep. So what I would say is, for me, it took me a while to find mine, but I think if you can find a teacher that is authentic, that's what we're talking about. The way to find out if they're authentic is to look and see, are they actually practicing what they preach? It's quite simple. It really is. And you can see it quite easily. So somebody who's teaching you and saying they want to do this, that, the other for you, see, are they doing it for themselves, first of all? Have they proven that they're living what they teach? And most of them aren't. And it's very, very easy to find out. I think, the internet is so available now. You can very much easily find out if somebody's authentic or not. Right. And then the other side of it is, don't underestimate your intuition, because you will feel that connection. Like I felt the connection with you, and it wasn't even in person. Like, I just knew you were authentic. You can feel that, and don't underestimate that. Like your intellect might say, oh, this looks really cool, and I'll look really cool if I talk to this person and I work with them. That's different. That's ego driven. That's intellectually driven, and that's not there for the best reason, which is to bring the best out of each other. I feel like so many people will sell you the dream, right? And you say it and you're like, oh, a nice shiny ball, but you just kind of have that feeling. How much of this then is, you said in the book, with the neuroscience right at the beginning, there's neuroscience research, tons of it, where there's almost an overemphasis on reason. How much of the intellect and reason, what's the balance between that and your gut and your intuition and your feeling? Obviously you need both, but talk to me about that. Yeah, I think the aspect of the intellectual is really only just to quieten the thoughts. It's like how do you put it? You have so many different thoughts, and the way to actually stop those thoughts is to give itself an intellectual reasoning to stop the thoughts, if that makes sense. Yep. So you have to please the intellect first of all, so it kind of goes, oh, so that's what it's about. Oh, now I can relax. Now I don't have to ask any more questions. And then you can move that aside, and then you start being your authentic self, and then you start getting the true understanding of where I should be, without that distraction of all those thoughts that are really driven by conditioning. Good. Look at that. You got it. Talk about the book before we wrap.
Okay.
Conscious Awareness. Tell us why you wrote it, where people could get it. Tell me all about it.
So Conscious Awareness, I finished it with my last trip to India, as I said, and I have two first books which kind of go into conscious awareness to a certain extent at a specific level, but this goes much deeper. And what it means is that it's a state of awareness, so it goes beyond consciousness, and it's basically being conscious of that awareness. So when you go into meditation state, you can go deep, deep, deep. When you get to that lowest and deepest state, that is awareness. But my book now explains how can you actually bring that into the conscious world. So consciously bring that sense of awareness into everyday life. And it kind of borders along the line of roles that we play. So most of us, unfortunately, we start playing our roles in life and we forget who we really are. And then we become the roles that we're playing. So this way is you remain in that state of awareness, but you're conscious of that. And then you actually bring that into every role that you play. So you're the best version of all the roles that you're playing when you're playing them, because you're not playing the role, you're playing you in that role. So the book basically talks about that, and it goes into a lot of the science as well, because I think that it, again, triggering the intellect needs to understand all of this, first of all. So it goes into the whole neuroscience, and I actually love all that, and quantum physics as well. I study that. I love all that, because it actually underlines the truth of all of what the great philosophers are always telling us, that everything is beyond time, that there's no cost-based, all that stuff we stuff. So conscious awareness, it touches a lot on the different new theories of reality that we have, panpsychism and biocentricity and all that. So it gives you the intellectual understanding of what conscious awareness is about. But then at the end, it explains it in a way that I think you can get. The reason it can get to you in that way beyond the intellect is because we talked about at the very start of this show was, I got knowledge, which was great. But the wisdom is when you actually integrate it and bring it into your life. So it was only after that last trip in India where I actually experienced it totally and then brought it into my life. So I understood it and I had the knowledge and I could write about it. But I had to experience it in order for me to be wise about it, in order to actually partake in giving it to somebody else. So I think that's what the book does in the end. It explains it in a way that goes beyond the intellect on how you can actually get to that level of pure beingness where you are consciously aware all of the time. And that is nirvana, heaven and earth.
It's highly motivating. I'm very excited. It's good stuff. And this is, it sounds cliche, but I really am so lucky that I've been given the gift of being able to speak, of being able to write, being able to meet fantastic teachers and be able to articulate it in words and in writing. And also to be taken care of. I mean, I've been taken care of financially by whatever, so that I can actually do all of this. And my motivation, again, we talk about authenticity. I will always ask myself, am I being authentic in everything I do? And it's a tough ride. I'm not always authentic, straight up I'm not. But my motivation now, I have the comfort of being able to say, can I do good with this? So with this podcast, this isn't about intellectually triggering people to buy my book as such. This is an opportunity where I can actually express my traits and characteristics. I can speak, and I've had knowledge and I've had wisdom. So this is an opportunity where I can maybe even help one person. And if I can, wow. I do feel that you've given everyone listening to this podcast plenty to think about. And that's ultimately what I want. I want people to think. It's fantastic. Ronan Rooney, thank you so much for being here. How can everybody find you? We'll put the plugs on the website. We'll put it below, all that. But quick plug for you.
Great. Well, look, the best way is my website, ronanrooney.com. If you go there, everything else is there. So there's podcasts there and that. But ultimately, I'm creating a new self-mastery platform, which is free. Because that's what I want to do. I wanted to put all these insights that I've learned into a way where people can actually really integrate it. So there's 4-minute kind of insights with built-in mind mastery techniques and meditations and stuff. And it's free. It's free to subscribe to. So you just go into my website, go onto the Connect, and then you just fill out the form and you're in. And I'd love to. If I can help you, great. And if you're getting something from it, great. And if you're not, then you move on to the next teacher.
Very good. I love it. Ronan, this is amazing. Ronan Rooney, check him out. We need to start thinking, and I love this type of thinking about where you fit. This is what set me on my journey a long time ago. What's the purpose of everything? So lots to think about and lots of potential paths for you to go. So thank you for tuning in. As always, stay tuned for more and have a wonderful week. Thanks.